Testing. That's it. Thank you. Boy, I got. Test, 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 test. All right. Hey, I think we'll get started. It's maybe 2 minutes, 1 minute short. Just to talk a little bit about, we were mentioning here at the table about what happened in Pittsburgh and the murder of all of the Jewish people in that synagogue. And, you know, there is a very dangerous theology that's taught in a lot of mainline churches in America, and it's called replacement theology. And the idea is that the Christian church has replaced all of the promises that are found in the Old Testament to the Jews. And so the Jews, now that sounds pretty theoretical and sterile, just listening to that. But the way it plays out is diabolical. Because when people move the Jews out of that favored position, when they are no longer God's chosen people, then the world has a way of turning them into almost demons. And a lot of the hatred and murder that has been carried out against the Jews has been perpetrated and fostered by that replacement theology. So you'd be surprised how many people, denominations, really hold to that position. And Calvary Chapel does not. We are very strong supporters of Israel. We do know that a Jew will not go to heaven just because you're a Jew, right? There is no way to heaven except through Christ. But they are still and remain God's chosen people. There are strong promises in the Old Testament. So these kinds of things can play out that way. Second thing I just want to mention, many of you prayed for my wife. On Sunday morning when I left, she was rolling around in pain on the floor. And it got a little better, and she said, go to church, and I went to church. But then I got a phone call from the emergency room and said, you better come in here. So I went in, and she was again writhing in pain. That was at 10:30. And they gave her a shot of morphine. That didn't touch it. And then 15, 20, half an hour later, it just went away. Right? Another shot of morphine. Yeah. Yeah. And then the pain went away. And it hasn't come back. We went home, no pain. In the morning, no pain, nothing. So I've said to someone, I believe when we get to heaven, as much this one as anyone I've ever been through, I'm going to say to Jesus, so it was pretty bad, wasn't it? And he's going to say it was pretty bad. But a lot of people prayed. And I fixed it. So thank you for praying for my wife. Boy, do I appreciate that very much. Yeah, thank you. Amen. You know, I've often used the example that, you know, when you take care of another person, Jesus said, inasmuch as you've done it to the least of these, you've done it to me. When you take care of another person, any other person, it's just like if you have a 20-year-old child who's in a former Soviet bloc country and is in trouble, and you happen to be there and you help them, that parent is more grateful that you helped their child than if you would have helped them, right? And I think God's the same way. I think God is more pleased, more grateful when we help his children than if we would do something directly for him. Did you get it? Because we are all his children. So my point is, your praying for my wife was much more appreciated than you ever praying for me. You get that? So with that said, and I can't quite say that. Sue, if you want to open us with prayer, please. Mm-hmm.
It's wonderful to have such great brothers and sisters in Christ. How you do what you do, so beautifully. Yeah. So thank you. I just cannot say thank you enough. And I pray blessings on all of those who pray for me and for others. There's lots of people in the church that we pray for.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that when we send out prayer requests, that people actually do pray.
That's right.
Lift them up. It's wonderful to have the avenue of prayer, knowing that you answer and that you do what is right and best. God, thank you for your word and your truth and your love and forgiveness, all that you offer to us while we were yet sinners.
Yeah. Yeah. Amen. Amen. Thank you. Hey, we are, last week we ended Psalm 49, and Rick Jan did a great job, and he taught Psalm 50 and 51, I believe. He went through them quickly, understand? I'm going to pick up just a few verses in Psalm 50 to highlight. So if you turn to Psalm 50, and we're going to be looking at starting at verse 8 through 15. Psalm 50, verse 8. And just a couple points I want to make about this yet. Psalm 50, verse 8. Says, I have no complaint about your sacrifices. This is God speaking to man. I have no complaint about your sacrifices or the burnt offerings you constantly bring to my altar. But I want no more bulls from your barns. I want no more goats from your pens. For all the animals of the forest are mine, and I own the cattle on 1,000 hills. Every bird of the mountains and all the animals of the field belong to me. If I were hungry, I would not mention it to you, for all the world is mine and everything in it. I don't need the bulls you sacrifice. I don't need the blood of goats. And here's the punchline. What I want instead is your true thanks to God. I want you to fulfill your vows to the Most High. Trust me in your times of trouble. and I will rescue you, and you will give me glory. You know, when you read this, but I want no more bulls from your barns. I want no more goats from your pens. The point is that grace was alive in the Old Testament. And this person's heart, the person who wrote this, their love for God exceeded the sacrificial system. It went way beyond the sacrificial system. And it's the same with legalism. You know, when people stop at legalism, when their religion is based on do's and don'ts, they're living in the sacrificial system. But love goes way beyond do's and don'ts. Love for God goes way beyond the sacrificial system. Love goes way beyond the do's and don'ts that we do. You know, when you think about it, that I have to make sacrifice to please God, that I have to keep my list of do's and don'ts to please God, I have found so many times that if you compare marriage to relationship with God, it many times can get you back thinking straight. Because again, God's love for us, his devotion for us, exceeds the best marriage that has ever been. Is that fair? Let's say another way. There's no marriage of two human people that exceeds the love God has for us. True? So here's my point. Take my wife, Sue. If she were to say to her friend of hers, you know, Carol, if I bake a good meal, I think he'll love me. What does that say? It says all the wrong things, right? If I bake a good meal, he'll love me. But you see what that is? It's works, isn't it? It's that she has to work in order to earn my love for her. But if you heard someone say that, you'd say, boy, there's something wrong in that relationship. We get that in a marriage. Why don't we get that in a relationship with God? Isn't it the same thing? Only on steroids. Or if she says to one of her friends, you know, I'm afraid that if he comes home today and his shirts aren't ironed, well, let's forget the iron. He comes home and the shirts aren't washed, he'll hit me. Well, you would report me. You probably should report me. But yet some people, they feel that that's what God is going to do to them if they don't do what he says they're supposed to. He's going to hit you. He's going to take it out on you. He's going to punish you. He's going to hurt you. How could our relationship with him be less than what a good marriage would be? Did you get it? That's really important. And see, this psalm writer, Asaph, he got it. He understood this. Instead, the psalm says in verse 13, I don't need the bulls of your sacrifice. Put this up. You know, there's the legalism part that he has us scrutinized. And then this is the point. Verse 13, I don't need the bulls you sacrifice. I don't need the blood of goats. What I want instead is your true thanks to God. I want you to fulfill your vows to the Most High. And then I want you to trust me in your times of trouble, and I will rescue you, and you can give me glory. And to me, that is really a really important psalm to me personally. I want you to trust me in your times of trouble. You ever been in a time of trouble? Yeah, sure. And what does he want in that? He wants you to trust him. He wants you to look to him. I want you to trust me in your times of trouble so I can rescue you and you can give me glory. Isn't that cool? That's the deal. Look, you're going to get trouble. When that happens, this is what I want. I want you to trust me. Keep looking at me. Keep your eyes on me. I want you to trust me so that in the end you can give me glory. So that's the deal. That's the arrangement. When you get into trouble, remember, okay, there's another step here. I trust him, and then what's going to come out of that is it's going to give me opportunity to give him glory on the other side of this. And so that's a neat section. And then Psalm 51. The sign here says, repenting like David. This is the fourth of the 7 penitential psalms and the greatest. It came from David's darkest moment in his life and the watershed moment of going from crushing denial and guilt. This is his sin with Bathsheba. When he moved from crushing denial and guilt